Welcome back, everybody, to the Pavement Group podcast. We've got a fun one this week. We're talking with Mark Sullivan from Salesforce. We're going to talk some technology. We're going to talk a lot about a foundation that we're both very passionate about. Brian Hess joins me as always. How are you, Brian?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me again, brother.
Yeah, no, you're invited every week. All right. You're always going to be here. All good. All right, let's get it going. Episode 15 of the Pavement Group podcast. Let's go. All right, welcome back. Episode 15 here. We're rolling along. Brian, again, thanks for joining me, man. I like the glasses. Different look this week.
Yeah, I'm trying to save my eyes, man. You know, all this digital stuff. I got the blue light glasses on.
Smart. Well, speaking of digital stuff, we have someone who I'm very proud to call a great friend, but also one of the smartest people in the digital technology world that I've met along the way. My good friend, Mark Sullivan. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing great, Todd. Thanks for having me today. It's great to be here.
Yeah, you bet. So Mark's with Salesforce. He runs their, I think you're executive vice president, you run their financial services division. And people might say, all right, well, you're a paving podcast. You deal with construction, that sort of thing. Why is Mark on here? Well, a couple of reasons. As I said, we get together we've got some mutual connections that brought us together. Our families have become friends over the last few years. And every time we go out to dinner, we have an opportunity to sit and chat. I'm always blown away by the things he tells me. And again, as you guys know, we're a pretty forward-thinking company when it comes to technology and that sort of stuff. And I love talking about it. So there's a lot of crossover from what they're doing and sort of how it works itself into our industry. So I wanted to talk about some of that stuff. Mark, would you share a little bit of your background with our crew?
Yeah, Todd, I'd love to. I've grown up primarily in financial services and the intersect between big banking and investment banking and technology. For most of my career, I've spent some time in some large consulting organizations, Accenture and IBM, and I've run my own company out of Chicago, a place called Whitman Hart, for a little while, doing that type of work, and was blessed and fortunate to join Salesforce about a year ago and start working with them. And they are the fastest growing enterprise software company in history, and arguably really created the momentum around cloud computing and software as a service and what that means to customers, which you can imagine in light of this pandemic and working from anywhere and trying to be successful from anywhere. It's a wonderful place to be and a really exciting, dynamic time to be there. So really proud of where I am. And I basically help financial services companies, banks, insurance companies, all different sizes, all different flavors around the world, help them serve their customers more successfully, help them grow their business more successfully by interacting with their customers in a different way, leveraging our technology. So really, really exciting time to be engaged like that.
Well, that's cool. So you've seen the inside of some of the biggest companies in the world over your career here the last 15, 20 years. What do you think? You just used the word, you said, the largest growth in history, not just currently, not just in your marketplace, like in history. It is epic what Salesforce has done. Yeah. What do you attribute, beyond the technologies? Obviously, the technology is pretty special, but what do you attribute it to?
Look, I think it's an extraordinary culture in the company. You'll hear our CEO, Mark Benioff, talk about, our values, and that's really important to our company. Values create value. You'll hear that. And how we operate, how we treat our employees, how we focus relentlessly on the success of our customers is really what makes us, I think, special. Our technology's excellent, beyond description, excellent.
Sure.
And our engineering capabilities are amazing, and what we do in the technology front is extraordinary. But our culture and who we are and how we represent our values, what I think makes us really special, and that hyper relentless focus on our customers and their success, I think is a meaningful differentiator for our organization, because we do not take our eye off that ball ever. That's job one.
Yeah, well, that's neat.
I have a quick question on that one, man, because we have a lot of similarities in that side of things, and I believe that, the creation of the company and the deliverable of solving problems is the necessity and the foundation of business. But really what makes that foundation run is the people believing in that solution, but also having the culture behind it, right? That keeps people performing at their highest levels. What do you think a few of the things that stand out to you about Salesforce as an organization that keeps people driving? Like, what is it within those values, or what is it within that culture that really continuously pushes them?
Look, I think there's a tremendous amount of pride, but it's always a focus on giving back. Todd and I met through, a nonprofit that we're very, very passionate about. And that's not abnormal for the people that are part of Salesforce. Our culture is pretty rich with how do we give back? How do we focus on a variety of different things, not just the bottom line, not just the capitalistic success of the company, which we're very proud of and we do really well on, but how do we focus on sustainability? How do we focus on our community? How do we focus on creating outcomes and value in everything that we touch? So we sort of leave the world in a little bit of a better place. And people want to be a part of that. People are attracted to that. People go out of their way to try to find their way into an organization that has that type of represented values and what that means to be part of that organization. So that allows us to attract and retain the best talent in the world. And it's amazing how that shows up, with our clients, because, they want that too. And they share some of those values. And when those come together, it's extraordinary. A lot of the times, the first part of the conversation that I have with a customer is not about our technology, is not about our profit and loss or their profit and loss, but much more about what they're trying to do, culturally within their organization, how they're trying to address diversity in their organization, or manage their employees differently in their organization, or create value in their community, and what can we potentially do together to do that. And when that sort of connective tissue comes into play, it's extraordinary, what we can do as an organization with our customers, and what gets accomplished well beyond, the great financial benefits that are achieved, and the technology benefits that are achieved. But the impact that gets created in the community is unique and front and center, at Salesforce, front and center in all that we do.
I think that's great, man. And my follow-up question to that is, does that, being a person that came to Salesforce about a year ago, obviously it's a massive company, right? But when you describe that, the first thing that I think is like, it almost has a very small feel, as a result of that culture. And so that's one of our goals, is to, regardless of how big we ever get, to always have that small feel, right? Where that relationship between the customer and Salesforce is very personal, and not let it feel like, a lot of times people assume larger companies feel. Is that accurate?
It's so accurate, and it's sort of it's our value proposition to our customers. We believe in one version of the truth around the data that you have around the customer that you're trying to serve, and trying to understand their needs more effectively and serve them in a better way. And if you look at what Salesforce does on services or sales or marketing, or some of the major products that we have and how those are rendered to our customers, it really all operates on knowing that customer better, allowing our customers to know their customers better, and serve them maniacally, so that they create different types of connections, different type of value, different types of customers' experiences that resonate and differentiate those organizations, and allow them to grow, much, much more successfully. So we're really proud of that. If you look at our customer base and you look at the performance of those organizations, it's extraordinary and it stands out. And that is a huge thing that we put forward as what it means to be a partner with Salesforce, because we think it means something pretty special, and we think it can have a huge impact on your customers as well.
Nice.
Very cool, man.
So you're in the enterprise space most of the time with what you're doing. A lot of the folks that watch the podcast and part of our network are, $5 to maybe $40, $50 million companies. So they're in that small, medium business size space. Obviously, a lot of people using Salesforce. I knew Salesforce. I've used it in the past primarily as a CRM. I know what you guys do now is like exponential. I'm talking a decade ago.
Yeah.
But how do you see, why do you think it would be so important for a smaller or medium-sized business to use some of the technologies you guys have? Like, how can it transform their business?
Look, I think a huge part of our business serves the smaller business community in all different industries. And if you think about if you were a restaurant or a small shop owner pre-COVID, and what you had to go through to try to stay connected to your customers,
Sure.
You used to aspire to be digital. You now have to be digital, and your interactions with your customers have to have a digital component to them. So that's put a lot of pressure on making the right technology decisions and changing that interaction model. How many of our parents knew how to use Uber Eats, last in September of 2019, right? But mom and dad all know how to do it now. And I think all of those store shops, all of those restaurants that were physical brick and mortar places have all had to think about, how do I serve my customers and change the interaction to have a digital dimension to my business? And the minute you enter into that digital ecosystem and that digital interaction, there are different expectations. There are different interaction expectations. It all feels like a real-time model. There's different data that gets collected. There's different insights that you can learn about adding more value to your customer. And so Salesforce takes a ton of pride in our ability to help market and attract those customers, sell to those customers, manage those customers, and service those customers along the way. And what we've done for, frankly, hundreds of thousands of businesses throughout this pandemic is something we're super proud of, because those that were aspiring to really aggressively enter into the digital era did it out of necessity. And a lot of them have done it using Salesforce, and the impact that has been wonderful.
Yeah, so that's great. Looked like you were going to say something there, Brian.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. Because being a small business that had the opportunity and task of navigating that pandemic, I get asked a lot in these types of interviews. What advice would you have given yourself at the end of 2019, if you had it to do over again? And my response is always the same. And you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I say, man, be prepared for the greatest gift wrapped in the strangest package, right? Like, you have no idea the gifts that were unlocked for businesses in that time period. And to your point, it is the force of the hand to technology for companies that were maybe resisting it, or maybe they were having such success that they didn't need it, or they felt like they didn't need it, and they were pushed in that direction. And we were fortunate to be, kind of on the front end of that, like where we were already embracing it. And then we just leaned into it even more. And the speed at which we were able to move forward in business is incredible. So, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. And man, what a gift it has been to be able to evolve into, this space where, we were talking before we got on here, where just everything about the way that people view this stuff has changed. And it is unlocked so many different chambers of business that didn't exist before 2020 happened.
Yeah, I think, it's sort of a bittersweet type of situation. This pandemic has been relentless for so many people, and what a ridiculous tragedy, and the suffering that's gone on around the world, and with so many of our clients and so many of our employees, our family members and everything else is so not trivial, and it's not over. Things are still progressing, and we're still trying to navigate our way through this. And I think we'll be navigating through this for some time. However, I think the dynamic between a business and its customer has probably changed forever, because there's a new set of expectations that exists in the marketplace that is dependent upon technology. And I think we ought to acknowledge that. And there's unquestionable, to your point, that there's potentially some meaningful benefit to that, both for the customer and for the businesses that are served. And so we're in that sort of situation now where we've evolved to something that could be perceived as better, quote unquote, certainly different. And I think we're still evolving. I think people will start to go back to the office to a certain degree. They'll return to work. There'll be different types of protocols. The standards with which how we interact with our customers will continue to change as the curtain comes up on this pandemic, but that also creates a great innovative opportunity for customers, for clients and businesses that either don't exist or want to change, because I think there's some open space for how you serve customers that maybe wasn't there yesterday that people can potentially take advantage of. So, it's a great time to be an entrepreneur. It's a great time to be involved in technology. It's a great time, ironically, to be starting a business and thinking differently how you serve your customer. And that's not intuitively logical, given that we're in the middle of a global pandemic that's done so much harm. But unquestionably, it's driven innovation at a pace that's pretty darn unique. Most of my customers would do what they would do in 2 years, they're trying to be done in 2 months, and everybody's in a hurry. And they actually can now do some of those things a lot faster than they used to do. And so that's exciting, but also changes the expectation. The bar has been raised, and while things feel really fast and hurried right now, they're probably as slow as they're going to be over the next 5 years. And it's going to continue to accelerate, and that's going to be awesome for some companies. That's probably not good news for some other companies.
Right. Yeah. Can you keep up? Can you innovate fast enough?
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about digital currency, because we were talking about this last time I saw you as well. And I'm pretty sure the first time I heard about Bitcoin, it was $22. And if I had bought it then, I'd have a Lamborghini like every other kid on YouTube. But I didn't. And I still haven't completely wrapped my mind around it. You gave me some good explanations on it. So specifically, digital currency, you believe, obviously not tomorrow, but in the future, it's got to be the way that currency goes. Do you think those kind of those subset of companies that I mentioned to you there before, the $5 to $50 million companies, have to worry about that as a payment system anytime in the near future?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you see this evolving to?
I don't think so in the near future. I think digital currency, for the most part, is still a speculative asset right now. And I think people were looking at it as a hedge against inflation. I'm not sure that's necessarily true if you look at the trading patterns that we've seen over the last year. I think it's less about your coin of choice, whether it's Dogecoin or Bitcoin or whatever. I think it's much more a story about the blockchain and, the importance of transparency in a digital ledger where, I can understand, Todd, if you have currency to afford my services because I can look on a ledger and see that. And you can see the transactions that enabled me to have some money to share with you. So there's a transparency and an auditability that comes with the blockchain that is pretty darn unique and can be very compelling in a lot of different industry circumstances, including currency. And so so I think the magic is really the blockchain and the uses around the blockchain for different types of needs in the industry. If you think about managing a contract or editing a contract or creating a contract, the blockchain has a lot to offer to create transparency and collaboration associated with that survives in perpetuity. It also has a lot to offer potentially around currency. But I do think, Bitcoin and all the other coins are still somewhat unregulated. They're not tied to the central banking system. There's a lot of things that would leave some ambiguity as to what the future genuinely looks like. It's undeniable that people see it as the sort of a sovereign currency in and of itself, in that, if we do this, we don't have the dependency on governments, et cetera. But it's somewhat inconceivable to me too that at some point, the government doesn't step in and say, okay, here's how we intend to regulate this. And there's a lot of pros and cons to whether they should or shouldn't do that. But I do think it's inevitable. At this point, the more people that get engaged in these types of coins and currency, that these governments who are trying to manage the financial soundness of countries and nations are going to pay attention to this question. And so people are still wondering, what does that look like and where will that go? And I think all of my financial services clients have an interest in that. You see a lot of organizations in the interim recognizing that this is sort of a hot space and trading crypto. So a lot of financial services have entered into the market to trade crypto because there's a lot of demand in doing so, and so they're learning how to set up those exchanges and trade crypto. But I think the future, being able to pick like what coin's going to win and what coin's not going to win, and is it going to replace currency? I think that's a little bit up for grabs right now, but you're in a hot market with a lot of liquidity. There's a lot of speculation, and it's a speculative asset, in my opinion, for now. But I think the blockchain and some other pieces of this could become pretty special over time.
Okay. And this podcast, by the way, is going to be an NFT. We're starting at 20 grand. We're going to put it out there if you guys are okay with that.
I like it.
So I want to talk about ALS One. I got one quick question for you, though, which is kind of sort of the speed round before we get into talking about ALS One here. If you were kind of put your advisor hat on and you were speaking to somebody that's in a startup mode, or they're trying to grow their business, really have an impact in their marketplace in the next 10 years, what's the biggest thing you tell them technology-wise to become sort of a disruptor, or to become successful in that arena? What should they be looking at?
Everything you do should be by the customer, for the customer. There's a lot of projects you see in the industry where people reach for the next mousetrap or just the shiny technology thing. I really believe that whatever you use technology for has to be done with the customer's experience in mind, and done in a way that allows you to better serve your customer. And that if you start from that outside perspective and work back in, you tend to make really good technology decisions. It's harder to pick technology than it ever has been before, because there are so many different choices. Years before, there weren't that many choices. So there are more choices, and the mistake that I think a lot of organizations make is they just buy the technology, the cheapest, or what's available, or what they know, rather than thinking intelligently about the implications on their customers and what do they know about their customers. And so I would design from the customer back and keep the customer in the front windshield all the time for all these decisions, because it does make a huge difference, because at the end of the day, serving and selling to your customers is what matters.
Do you think that got lost over the years?
I think in startups, not so much. Startups tend to have a great customer focus because that's what they got in business for, the ones that survive anyway. But I think in larger companies, where there's massive architectures and hundreds of thousands of applications and different departments buying technology, I think it can create some confusion and what we call technical debt, where technology decisions get made, but they're not really impactful or effective, and yet you're still paying for them. And are you moving the needle with your customer? Is this really advancing your business? Is it modernizing with you? Becomes a huge part of the technology decisions that you make. And I'm very fortunate to work for a company that born in the cloud, started in the cloud. Where you can log on and use our technology right away. You're not building something for years, and so the whole concept of software as a service and the efficiency of that and the predictability of that, the way that grows with you is just so compelling compared to trying to own and manage and address all the technology independently as a company. And that's so there's more choices, but if you're going to start in the cloud, be flexible, and do it with a customer in mind all the time.
Okay. Well, that's great advice. Brian, you said before too, and I think this is kind of the same argument, that people use technology and put it on autopilot. Basically, you start losing some of that feel because you think the technology is doing work for you. So does that kind of resonate with what Mark just said?
Yeah, it's funny, Mark. I think you'd fit perfectly in the construction industry, because your theory on what you just said is don't do it. Yeah, right. It is. But I want to make sure that the business owners that are listening hear that, because it is important to first and foremost identify the problem that you're trying to solve. And I think that many times in construction, we think that it's like, the problem we're trying to solve is to pave somebody's driveway or to pave somebody's parking lot, when that's not really the problem at all, right? There are so many other layers of issues that customers experience in that journey. And so, what you're talking about is to create a customer experience roadmap and then interweave technology in that to reduce costs, to speed up anything that you can, to reduce the amount of time that it takes to do something, increase the communication. And that's really what we stand on. And we say this all the time, but I believe the companies of the future, man, are the ones that learn how to use technology at every twist and turn that they can to do all those things that I just mentioned, while still maintaining that very small personalized interaction, whether it be through technology like this or not, but you still get that personal feel. And when companies can mesh those two things together, where they have culture and technology and they intersect those two perfectly, you probably work with some of them, right? That like when they get it right, man, it is an explosion of success that's unmatched. And that is, in my opinion, the future of business. Is that it's like, how do you interact? How do you set a set of values in a company that are foundational to build on? How do you create a customer experience? And then how do you infuse technology to really speed up the solutions solutions to problems that customers are facing? And that's the exciting part, man. When you're talking about that, like my blood gets going, because I'm a technology guy through and through. And I just think like, that is what it's all about, right? And I think that people really have to spend the time identifying, what problem are you really trying to solve? And then how do you apply technology to do it better and faster?
Totally agree.
No, right on. All right. So last thing I want to touch on. So ALS One's a foundation that Mark is the chairman of. He's the chairman of the board right now, has been since I think 2018. So we've got a mutual friend, someone that's very important to both of us, a guy that I was in business with named Kevin Gosnell, and Mark played college football with him. Kevin got diagnosed with ALS back in 2015. And I still remember he told me, he's like, you got to call Mark. I had never met Mark before. I had heard some stories. These guys had a pretty unique group of guys that they played college football with at Framingham State. So I heard a lot of the stories. He said, you got to call Mark. And there's nothing for Mark to do right now, but you're going to need him. And I was at the outset of starting ALS One with Kevin. He just said, just get to know him a little bit, and eventually you guys are going to need this guy. And now I know why you've become the chairman of the board and really have taken it to new heights along with Jen and the rest of the crew. Will you share a little bit of your experience? Maybe you can tell, I've talked about it a little bit here before, but you tell the story so well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, look, I think, you get that dreaded phone call and learn that a dear friend or family member has contracted something like ALS. And honestly, I had done the ice bucket challenge and, goofy things like that, but really hadn't explored the world of ALS and understand the implications and what that actually means to, someone that is victimized by that disease, or the families associated with people there. And getting firsthand exposure to that was really challenging, and watching, that progress through somebody that you love and care for is incredibly challenging. And so I've never been prouder to be part of an organization that is really focused on trying to cure and care for cure ALS and care for the people that are afflicted with ALS. And we've made some incredible progress. At the end of the day, my contribution is to, try to help when I can. But we have a woman named Jen DiMartino, who's our CEO, who runs this organization. And she is just a spectacular leader that has her outreach into our community and her coordination with our partners at UMass and Mass General and ALS TDI and Compassionate Care ALS and all the hundreds of other contributors that have been a part of this journey has just been so exceptional. And so we've raised a lot of money. We've impacted a lot of lives. We've made tremendous progress, and we continue to make that progress. And, there's a joke, we're called ALS One because we try to unify the ALS community to the extent possible to eradicate this disease. But we talk about ALS done. And, when are we going to find our way to ALS done and actually not have to deal with, phone calls from people that have been diagnosed and families that are being impacted, and see what we can do to help them, but live in a world where that doesn't exist anymore. And so I think we're creeping up on that, and we're getting closer every single day. And the progress that's being made is just staggering, what's happened over the last 5 years. And and we're just so proud of that. And so I think, if we go back to Kevin and where all this started, and the fact that Todd and I kind of got pulled into this community by a joint friend, there's a lot of light in what I will call sort of a dark place. ALS is a pretty dark place, and people get really scared when they find their way into the ALS community, but there's so much light in that community of people that are helping each other and trying to find a way, and doctors who are dedicating their lives to finding solutions, people that are raising money and doing what they have to do to put an end to this. And so it's been a huge benefit. I'm absolutely the benefactor of being part of this and meeting some of the wonderful people that are involved in this community, and a huge part, frankly, of my life, and I think the people that are involved in this. So it's been an absolute privilege and continues to be so.
Nice, man. I think, we were talking about culture earlier too, and that's watching ALS One grow. In fundraising, it's grown in, I call it revenue, with helping the doctors and helping with care and that sort of thing. But it's built a community that is insane. Like that families, because you need the guidance, you need the best care. You're hoping that there's going to be a treatment someday, but you really just need people around you, right? You need a community at that time, and I've seen it just build. Getting a little emotional thinking about it.
Yeah.
But with what you guys have done, it's just it's incredible. Like you said, it's been an honor to be a small part of it, and it's really special. So I want people to go to alsone.org and just check it out. And it's very prevalent on social media. You can see a lot of the stories. Love it if you could donate a little bit. There's tons of great events. The Falmouth Road Race. I mean, going to raise what, $250,000?
Yeah,
at least. Road race alone. Yeah.
Never give Jen a number because she'll beat it no matter what we do.
I know. We gotta get. She's coming on next, Brad. She's incredible.
She's amazing.
Jen's great.
Awesome,
man. All good. Well, I appreciate your coming on, Mark. This was a lot of fun. Brian, you got any questions or parting shots before we wrap up here?
Oh man, it was a pleasure, Mark. I enjoyed listening to the mission, listening to the culture, and definitely I'm a technology guy, so this was an exciting one for me. I'm a fan, brother. So thank you for coming.
Love it. Thank you very much for having me. Such a privilege. Happy to do it anytime.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Mark Sullivan from Salesforce. Another great one, episode 15 of the Pavement Group in the books. We'll see y'all next time. Thank you.